Hello, this is Storm Warden coming back at you today with another video update. And today we're going to talk about the tropics and the active tropics out there right now. We have Kirk out here in the Atlantic, and then we have another area of interest out here, which is a 90% chance of cyclone formation in the next 7 days. That should also stay out here in the Atlantic. Both of these should pose no threat to the U.S. because we have pretty strong troughing over the continental U.S., which should keep both of these storms out well east and well north of the United States. However, we do have a 40% area over here in the Gulf, heading towards the Gulf of Mexico, and there's been some interesting model solutions that have basically a low pressure forming here in the Western Gulf, and then pushing due east towards Florida. Um, we have pretty strong troughing over the continental U.S., which I think is a pretty good bet. And now it's just how much of a system do we get out of here in the Gulf of Mexico. My personal opinion, I don't think this is going to be a big storm, and towards the end of the video, I'll tell you why, as I always give you my overall thoughts towards the end of the video. So, but that's the general theme of the Atlantic right now. It's pretty active. Probably two big hurricanes out here in the Atlantic, but they should mainly stay out here well off the United States coast. And then this storm over here in the orange could pose some threat to Florida down long term, but as of now, there's no immediate threat to any part of the U.S. So jumping now, looking at the GEFS ensemble members, and I'm gonna move this back just a little bit, and we're gonna start from tomorrow, October 2nd. I want you to watch this arrow over here in the Western Gulf because that's what's going to highlight a little bit. And notice you got a couple little areas of some development, but generally speaking, most of the ensemble members are fairly weak, and they don't develop into much of a bigger hurricane. So guys, even though you probably seen videos and things out there that are telling you that we could possibly see a big storm, more than likely, guys, that isn't going to be the case. There's a lot of limiting factors compared to Helene. This will not, I can say with full 100% confidence, this will not be a Helene 2.0. I can say that with pretty good, great confidence, excellent confidence that this won't be a Helene 2.0. So don't listen to the clickbaiters out there that are telling you guys that, because that's just not going to be the case. Now, granted, could we have some development? Absolutely. You see it here as the GEF ensembles, they do show some development. But generally speaking, none of these are nowhere near the support that Helene had at this time frame. So here's the GEPS ensemble members, and again, they're not all that excited either. You got a couple of very isolated members that do get this down to like 975, but generally speaking, that's highly unlikely. And just overall, the environment is just not all that favorable for a significant storm in the Gulf of Mexico. Now here we have the EPS ensemble members, and again, you got some ensemble members starting to creep back up in the Western Gulf, and then generally speaking, they all push towards Florida, which in Florida you don't need any rain. You don't need a tropical depression. You don't need a storm. You don't need any rain, because any rain is only gonna just hurt the recovery efforts that are going on. So again, to me, this is like a pretty big rainmaker for Florida. If you're in the Florida West Coast or in Florida, period, watch out, because you could get some heavier rain from a tropical depression that may form in the Western Gulf. But as of now, my thoughts are I don't expect this to be a huge storm. Now, I want to show you. I keep talking about troughing, and so remember what I told you earlier. Whenever we had this blue up in here, that's troughing. This red is ridging. So what we're looking out for is this trough to basically dig pretty deep, pretty far south. And what that's going to help do is a couple things. Number one, that should bring cooler air to the eastern U.S., which we'll talk about that another day. But that should bring cooler air to the United States, to the eastern U.S. And then also, what's it going to help do? It's just going to help impart this southwesterly shear all over the northern Gulf. So that means that even if we get a system that develops with a low circulation and we get a name, it probably won't be a big storm because you have so much wind shear to the north of the system, which should keep things pretty small, pretty lopsided, and just overall very unorganized. So we're going through time. You can see our trough as it starts to really dig in, and there's our trough right there, right there. So as we get into late this weekend, here's our big old trough moving through. This should bring cooler air to the eastern U.S., but this should also impart that southwesterly shear over the northern Gulf, which should keep things at bay. This will also bring in a pretty big bag of dry air to the north, which should also come over the Gulf. So generally speaking, guys, this system doesn't look all that intense. Now, that's the trough that we're seeing, and I'll draw it right here on your screen because I want to give you an even better representation. You watch our streamlines go something like this. You notice how they dip, and there's a dip in the jet stream. This is our cold front. This is our trough. Whenever you see your lines go up like this and then they come down like that, that's what you call a dip in the jet stream. And typically that is a trough or a cold front that's moving through, which is very helpful because that'll also help to keep any storms that form out in the Atlantic well out to sea. So again, this trough is gonna help us. It's gonna help us out a lot. It's gonna help keep rain chances at a minimum. It should also help bring in cooler temperatures, and it should also help keep anything that forms in the Atlantic out to sea. So again, lots of good news for those who are recovering from Helene still, because Helene was a really bad situation. And I know I keep repeating myself, but I will do a video on that, overview on that at some point this week. I just gotta, get all the data in, and once I do that, I'll make a pretty detailed big video about Helene and how my forecast verified for that. Now, on laptop, if you notice my screen is a little dark, guys, it's because my laptop is at minimum battery right now. So please bear with me if my screen is a little darker. Hopefully it's not too dark for you guys not to be able to see. So I've been talking about wind shear. Well, here's what I mean. So I want you to watch this. There's going to be an L that pops up, an L, which is low pressure. That's going to pop up over here in the western Gulf. I want you to watch that area, but I also want you to watch the northern Gulf. You saw that southwesterly wind shear that's coming in from our trough, and you can kind of see in our streamlines how this trough is oriented, because you can see how there's a dip and then it comes back up, and that's noting our trough digging late this weekend, early next week. Look at all that wind shear to the north and northwest of this system. That should really help keep this system at bay. I know there's some outrageous model runs out there that probably show something crazy. Guys, with this amount of wind shear and the way this year is gone, when it comes to limiting factors versus hurricanes, so limiting factors have won. So, Helene has been really the only big system that's been able to fight off the limiting factors, because even with that system, limiting factors held on a little bit longer than forecasted. So this is another situation where wind shear versus dry air versus a developing system, I can almost guarantee that this wind shear is going to win out. That's a lot of wind shear in the northern Gulf. You combine that with a pretty decent amount of dry air coming from our trough. Yeah, you have a lot of limiting factors right there. Look at all that dry air that's starting to spill into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's all going to help limit intensification and should help limit its ability to really form into anything very significant. So that's why, guys, I'm not leaning on the stronger side. Now, and looking at sea surface temperatures, again, they're still warm enough for development, but they're not nearly as warm as they were before Helene. So, again, generally speaking, could we see development? Absolutely. That's why we have a 40% area. But generally speaking, guys, models are very anemic. They're not very significant. And quite frankly, this may just be a big rainmaker for Florida, which is not good, obviously, because you guys were just hit by Helene. So you don't need any rainfall. And this could trend to nothing. It could just stay a disorganized mess. I do think in some way, shape, or form, this is going to bring rainfall to Florida. But it just matters of, does this come with a name or does it not come with a name? It could get a name, tropical depression, or it could be a storm. But generally speaking, I don't see a significant hurricane developing out of this system. The strong trough to the north, which will help impart that southwesterly shear, and then also bring in a pretty big bag or pretty big dose of dry air, that should help keep things at bay. So, again, if you've been worried, if you've been hearing that, there's going to be another storm in the Gulf, guys, this doesn't look anything like Helene. And I don't think this will be a really big system. Again, anything can happen. Mother Nature does what it's going to do. But based off what I'm seeing right now, which is pretty decent amount of wind shear, plus this dry air to the north, this should help keep things at bay. So, that's all I got, guys. I know this video is pretty short, but I didn't want to talk in circles. I kind of just want to give you guys and clear some things up because, again, there's been a lot of people asking about, oh, is there another storm in the Gulf? It's going to be another Helene? No, it's not going to be another Helene. Atmospheric conditions are much less supportive of major hurricane like we saw Helene. So I'll be back at you guys with another video update tomorrow.